Good morning, everybody. Morning. I think the technology is working today. Well done. Super. So welcome to the November meeting of North Norfolk District Council's Overview and Scrutiny Committee. And welcome to any visitors online or in the chamber. And there are no fire alarms planned. So if the fire alarm goes off, we need to leave the chamber and go down the stairs. And we've added suggested timings in order to keep the meeting a manageable length. So we are constrained time-wise. So can we please keep introductions and presentations very brief to allow for the maximum possible debate. So, do we have any apologies for absence?
Apologies from Councillor Boyle, Chair.
Okay, any substitutes?
No substitutions.
Right. Any public questions and statements?
No public questions, Chair.
Thank you. Minutes. Has anybody got any comments on the minutes, factual accuracy? Or are you content to approve as a correct record? No comments on page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're trying to keep them shorter as we each meeting if we possibly can. It's our aim to be below 10 next time. Anyway, is that all right? Anyone want to propose them? Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Thank you very much. And all in favour? Lovely. Thanks very much indeed. Do we have any items of urgent business?
No items, Chair.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest amongst anybody know? And any petitions? No.
No petitions, Chair.
Thank you. So item 8, consideration of any matter referred to the committee by a member. Councillor Bailey, would you like to introduce this item?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Hopefully everyone can get behind this. It's a set of wording that's been crafted with Countryside Services, and the aim is really to get to a stage where all parties are hopefully liaising better in a more sort of positive outcome for residents.
Right. So the exact request, Councillor Bailey, is on the agenda. Yes,
indeed. As set out on the agenda, the wording that's been agreed is what we need to vote on.
Okay. Does anyone have any points they would like to add to this? No. So we're going to vote on for the Countryside team to proactively communicate with the public in a timely fashion regarding the way in which NNDC sites are managed, why they are managed in certain ways, and what plans are in place when upcoming works on these sites are likely to cause disruption or a significant change going forward. Okay, all those in favour? Super. Thank you very much. Visitors, you're very welcome to stay, but we wouldn't be surprised if you decided to leave. Responses of the council or the cabinet to the committee's reports. I don't think there are any. Is that right?
No, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. So we'd come on to the first substantive item, which is 10 delegated decisions. And we're to receive and note the report and the register of decisions taken under delegated powers. Does anybody have any comments to make on this? Councillor Cushing?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I find it quite interesting. What I cannot see from this report actually what committees these delegated decisions actually pass through. And if you look at the bottom one, which is a substantial award of money for the construction of Haysborough car park, maybe I've missed something, but I'm not sure where that was actually debated or discussed. Should we not have, in terms of being openness, actually understand where that came from?
Who's going to answer that? Which officer? Will you? Okay. Councillor Denny.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Cushing. I know you raised a query at Cabinet around the costings, which I did add into the report going to scrutiny. That one will have been following on from a Cabinet report that went through for the Haysborough car park, but I can see that it doesn't really reference the cabinet meeting there. So I will review the nature of the table and cross-reference it to whether they've been done through cabinet or whether they're purely done through an officer delegation. So it's much clearer going forward. But I will come back to you and confirm in writing about that one. I think it has come from a cabinet meeting, but I will double check and confirm for you.
Thank you. Yes, I think because any of these we need to understand for something like that, obviously it should be a substantial business case supporting that. And I do think we need to make sure we have sight of that.
Okay, do we need to vote on this one? Just for noting? No, lovely. Okay, so we go on to agenda item 11, which is budget monitoring. Thank you, Councillor Showers. I know you're very good at brief introductions. Lovely.
Good morning, members. Thank you, Madam Chair. So it will not feel like it was very long ago that I was presenting period 4. So apologies, but this is the way that we run things as we're looking forward. You will see that we're looking at a surplus at year end currently. That's completely explained within the report. But before we have any questions, I would just like the committee to be mindful of the things that I spoke about at the last meeting, which is what we don't know as we're going forward into the next budget. We are still waiting to know what the government funding is going to be, and I think that's going to be a Christmas present for the council, as they tend to leave that to the last minute. We're still waiting to understand what's going to be happening with business rates. That has been a low-level concern for quite some time, but I think it needs to be a forefront concern currently. And as you're aware, we are implementing food waste collections at the start of the next financial year, as government have legislated. So we've still got some costs there that we are going to have to be mindful of when we're setting the budget. So the team here are working to make sure that we have got tight budgetary control, but also in a very mindful way of what may or may not be coming in the next financial year.
Thank you very much. That was crisp and to the point. So we're asked to consider the report and recommend the following to full council: that we've noted the contents and the current forecast year-end position, and seeking approval of full council to increase the capital budget for Holt Country Park for next year to 140,000. And the third item, I think, isn't quite so relevant for us, as we discussed with Officer Denny. So it's what A and B that we're really focusing on. Do members have any questions about the budget report? Councillor Penfold?
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Councillor Shires. Just on the food waste collection, do we have any idea of the impact that that will have in terms of budgets? I mean, there must be some sort of outline.
So what we do know is that the government have vastly underestimated how much implementing food waste is going to cost. You've heard that across committees and at full council with regards to vehicles for one. And obviously we've got the bins. So we are currently investigating and in negotiation about it. And as soon as we know what the cost is going to be, bear in mind that every council across the country is trying to do the same thing at the same time. So we will update as soon as we are aware, but it will be an additional revenue cost that we don't currently have to pay for.
And are we, if I may, Chair, are we looking at ways we might sort of mitigate that, I suppose, in terms of phasing it in, or not having to do it all in one go, as it were, so we can play smart on that?
So from a financial perspective, myself and Don are trying to investigate how we can do this with the littlest impact on the budget, and obviously the littlest concern financially going forward. But I guess that's going to be a matter for Councillor Ringer to update when we've reached the point of where we're going forward with it.
Councillor Cushing?
Thank you, Councillor Shires. I'd like to take you to page 31, if I may, 5.3, and it states down there the percentage splits of how the capital programme is funded. It says 16% is being funded from borrowing. What capital projects are we actually borrowing money for, please?
So when we have set any capital programme, we've written in the intention to borrow. At the moment, we're not currently borrowing, as outlined in the report. But when we have set both the treasury management and the capital programme and all the papers that come forward, we looked at treasury management, I think, not so long ago. It's not in this committee cycle. I think it was the previous one. And that's where we set our intention. So if we're going to do a big project, we will always aim to get best value for money. And that means if we don't have to pay the interest on borrowing, and because we have the fluid funds, we would do that. So at the moment, we are not, but you are very aware that there is an intention to when we've put forward any of the capital programme.
I just follow up on that because it states down there 6.175 million. That is actually not being borrowed at the moment. Then that's some money that could be borrowed. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's accounted for in our MRP. Is that the correct acronym?
So in terms of funding capital expenditure, we've got three sources: capital receipts, grants or other forms of external income, or borrowing. We have to find money to fund all capital. So if we haven't got the first two, it always falls into borrowing. Borrowing can be, as Councillor Charles rightly said, can either be internal borrowing or external. So far, we haven't needed to borrow externally because we've used cash, our own working capital, whereby we've collected money on behalf of others, or we've received grants in advance, and we're using that money, but recording it as internal borrowing till such times as we need to borrow externally. MRP, just to clarify, is minimum revenue provision. So whenever we have an item of capital expenditure that is funded by borrowing, be it internal or external, it's a bit like the old mortgages where you had an annuity and an interest payment. So this is a bit like that annuity part where you put money aside to repay the capital element, be that in 40 or 50 years' time.
Thank you. I grasp that. So can I, if I may, just have one follow-up question. Should we go to page 29, 3.13? It says down there that the capital financing requirement stood at 17.5 million, but we've actually borrowed 5 million. So what you just said, how does that work into that figure, please?
Sorry, do you want to?
No, so I was just going to say the 5 million was cash flow, wasn't it? So that's not capital. So it's the MRP is both, did you say?
The capital financing requirement is that element of internal borrowing that we haven't, and external borrowing that we haven't funded yet, that we haven't found the money for. Yeah, that's correct then.
Thank you. Councillor Hankins?
Thank you, Chair. Can I say the financial team are to be commended on the savings that have been achieved. This is the second year running that, and I've only been a councillor for 2 years. So it's the second year running that we've had this huge deficit that has to be made up. On page 43, which details some of the savings that have been made and haven't been made, under business growth staffing, there's a £55,000 saving that's not been met. So I wonder what the explanation is for that, because overall the savings have been achieved. So I'd appreciate an answer to that question.
Of course. So this it isn't the first 2 years where we've had to make savings. Every year there's been a projected deficit. This year is possibly the lowest deficit in my term, the year coming. So we don't set a balanced budget for 3 years. We set a balanced budget for the first year, and then we will deal with the subsequent through the medium-term financial strategy. The 55,000, was a saving that was put forward. But at the point we put that forward, we didn't know whether or not we were going to get the UK SPF money or any of the other grants that the team have given. So we weren't able to make that saving because the government surprised us, as they do, with giving us money that we then had to give away. So that efficiency hasn't been made. So I've spoken to the team, and providing that we don't get the money next year, the efficiency will be made. But if we do get the grant money, then we will be retaining those staff members, which is necessary to enable the schemes to work properly.
So basically, you're saying that you didn't need the saving because you've got extra money. Is that correct?
It's not about having extra money, so the efficiency would need to be made. But in this year, because we were given grants that we didn't think we were going to receive, we've chosen to retain the resource to be able to deliver those schemes. So if we don't get the money next year, we won't need it. But obviously, we very much hope that we do get the money, because it's a massive benefit to our local communities.
Thank you.
I had a question about restructuring and how much of it is coming out of revenue and how much of it's coming out of reserve. Because there was some various numbers in the report and I couldn't quite work them all out. So it says that 96,000 will be funded from the restructuring reserve, but then service restructuring will cost 154,000. It says elsewhere. So could you clarify how much is reserve and how much is not?
Thank you, Chair. I don't have a precise split. What I can advise, where restructuring savings are made through deleting temporary posts, then there is usually very little in terms of restructuring cost. Where those posts are from the establishment or compensation is due to the individuals, then that's where we would seek to use reserves if we have them. Some areas of the council have been, because they use a lot of interim resource, have been trying to build up reserves for these occasions in case those fall into compensation criteria.
Okay.
But we can try and find a breakdown in the prime writing.
Okay. And I had another question about the spending on software customer service and the timing of it, given the longevity of the organisation. This is in reference to, I think there's two mentions of it. There's one on the investment and one on in item C. Is there a business case to show that the efficiency is hugely greater with this software?
Thank you, Chair. This additional capital spend for the software was an oversight in the original budgeting of the project. The officers involved hadn't realised that the configuration of the software would be an additional charge by the supplier. So we'd already committed the rest of the funds at that time, which would have been pre-LGR, and we needed this last bit to get the extra efficiency and full efficacy of the application.
Okay.
Any future investment in that would outlive the projected life of this organisation is considered in the round. That comes for clearly obvious reasons. There will be a large exercise to rationalise systems and how do we take telephone calls in April 28 will ultimately depend on what the solution is proposed by MHCLG. But yes, we are mindful that some of our investments may have a limited shelf life.
Great, thank you very much. That's very helpful. Any, Councillor Housden?
Thank you, Chair. We are asked to seek approval for the increase in the capital budget for Holt Country Park. What is the amount of the external section 106 fund? How much is coming in from the 106?
I believe it's been the 40,000. That's why we're seeking.
So is that
so we're not putting any extra money into it.
No,
the
no, no.
106 money is the
No,
top
I
up.
understand that, but you say contribution on page 23, and then you say contributions plural on page 31 item 5.5. So what is the full extent of the 106 agreement? That's my question.
Can you just give me the second page? You said
Yeah, it's
23.
31 page and item 5.5, page 31. So it's from external 106 contributions towards the scheme, but we're asked to approve on the basis of external 106 contributions singular to the scheme.
So I would suggest that we talk about section 106 contributions when we use that as a phrase. We don't generally use contribution unless we put an A in front of it. So I'm going to suggest that's a typo. It conflicting both, but if I learn otherwise, I'll let the committee know.
And what is the total sum of the 106 contribution?
40,000.
So it's just a single 40,000 contribution from 106. So we're having to find the other 100,000, presumably.
We have already put that in the capital programme.
Fine. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Bayes?
Yes, I looked through the budgets. I can't find where the net zero budget is. Is it built in within other streams, or I thought it might be a standalone one?
We have a reserve for net zero initiatives, but as you can see, there are other initiatives that come through that are externally funded. We've seen that on some of our photovoltaics, and sometimes we'll look for net zero efficiencies in property services, for example, if we're going to do some work there, but that will come out of the property services budget rather than the net zero initiatives. So that's for the bigger scale things, but obviously we've got our cabinet member for net zero, so potentially there may be a question for that when it comes to his paper.
Yeah, I understand a lot of it comes from external funding, but I just wondered what might have gone out in terms of revenue from the council this year, in terms of leaflets or advertising or whatever else it might be. Is that built in somewhere else? Sorry, I'm asking a question because I couldn't see it.
So is there a specific?
Well, for example, I know the new initiative, having spoken to Councillor Varley about this, is that for every sign up that the Norfolk County Council made, the actual company, I believe it's Greenhouses, Green Your House, we're making a £50 contribution to the council as an initiative. My understanding, that I wondered, A, where is that income coming in? Where is it situated? And the second question to that is, that will then indicate how many of the sign-ups have actually taken place as well across the area.
Okay, so there are two questions. You want to know how many sign-ups?
Well, first of all, how much money has come in from that incentive? That was agreed.
And you would like that broken down into how many
I think-
households have taken the incentive up?
I think from the amount of money that's coming, you'll probably be able to divide it by £50 and get an idea of how many we've got. But that's an interesting point from where I'm sitting in terms of whether we are getting revenue in from this. If we've spent a lot of money in terms of producing leaflets, and I don't know how much that cost is, but they were sent across to all of our district. So therefore, I would expect an income. Where is that money coming from to pay for those leaflets, and how much money we're getting back for advertising and getting an incentive from it? And I don't know where that's.
Okay, so you want to know the accounting for a specific scheme. Councillor Varley has indicated he would be able to respond on that question.
Thank you. I'm more than happy to respond and give a more substantial written explanation, but I just want to clarify that in regards of the Make My House Green scheme, £0 of NNDC, i.e. taxpayer money from North Norfolk residents, is being spent on this scheme. It is correct that for every installation, £50 is coming to NNDC. We have received some monies already, I believe £250, but I will check that. And that money is ring-fenced for specific green projects. But like I say, I will give a more substantial written explanation, but I do hope that that clarifies matters. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hasden?
Can you tell me what the 57,000 relates to on page 45 for supplies and services for travellers, please?
So you're looking at the traveller.
Travellers, supplies and
okay.
services.
So without being able to give you an exact answer, I'm going to assume that when we've got supplies and services for anything, then that's due to utilities and other things that we need to maintain. But I can get you an exact breakdown of that, of course. We do have a duty to provide the traveller sites.
Yeah, I understand that. Just seems a lot of money in the context. Okay, if you could provide some detail on that, that would help. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any further questions on the budget monitoring paper? In which case, are we content to recommend A, that we've noted the contents, and B, that we are seeking approval of full council to increase the capital budget to 140,000 for the Holt Country Park Eco Learning Space? And the third item is just an acknowledgement of the increased customer services software budget. And thank you very much for your explanation about that. Okay, are we all in favour of these? Okay. Good. Thank you very much. Okay, we move on to item 12. Fees and charges. And I guess the honourable member to my right will be introducing this. We had some questions answered already about the report. We found quite a few comments in that. So we've already had statements from Leisure in answer to a whole bunch of questions that we posed yesterday. I don't know how you guys want to do that. Do you want to go through the questions again, or do you want to assume that the answers were satisfactory and take them as read and start off with fresh questions now? I'd like to play it. Councillor Fletcher. Right. Okay. Good. Has anybody? You're introducing me. Sorry about that. That was just a little segue in. I didn't want to steal your thunder.
So this is an annual thing that we do to make sure that we are charging correctly and obviously maximising where we can. Some of the fees and charges are set by government, so we can't alter them. Some of the fees and charges we're only allowed to recover costs from, and some we have more discretion. But I note that for the first time, we've got quite a large change from some of our licensing charges. So Officer Caps has very, very kindly offered to join the meeting to outline why we are where we are there, because I know that everything else has gone up by a little bit, whereas there've been some quite substantial changes in licensing. And I note that we have car park fees and charges following after. So just a reminder that we don't conflate the two, so we'll get a little bit confused. So I'll hand over to Officer Caps just to give a brief introduction on licensing fees.
Thank you, Councillor Shires. Good morning, members. Just a quick introduction then into a reason behind why the licensing fees and charges have changed so significantly. An intensive and time-intensive piece of work's gone on, conducted by Elisa to my left, really, which has been a complete overhaul of those fees and charges. It's now based on a cost recovery process, which is good practice and sits within guidance about how we should be setting our licensing fees and charges. So there's been a whole time and motion study undertaken about how long it takes us to issue each specific license. So that's time from taking the initial application, working through it, printing out, if you like, processing it, the training of those officers, the whole piece of work's gone in behind the scenes to calculate the true cost of issuing a license. What it will mean to us as an organisation will mean that we'll see annual fluctuations in these fees. So it won't just be that we've done it once and now from here on we'll set them by inflation. Each year we'll consider the year previous, and the impact will then be felt for the next year's licence fee. So it is the correct way to do it. And I'm pleased that it's a piece of work we've been wanting to do for a while, and I'm very pleased that it's happened. But it does mean that some of our licenses have gone up and some of them have gone down. For example, caravans have increased dramatically, but that's because for the previous year we were employing a specific officer to issue caravan licenses. So you can see how that would adjust the fee for caravans, say, and animals look different because we've split them out as well. It's not a complete fee for issuing an animal license now. It's split into two parts. So I hope that gives you an explanation of why they look so different. But it is an overdue piece of work, and I can't emphasize how time consuming that's been for us. So thank you.
And the only other thing that I wanted to note is that beach huts and chalets have been included in the paper, and you'll note that we made the decision to not do the lets in the way with the short-term lets. We went to long-term lets only. As much as I am grateful to my team for having a commercial focus all the time, please ignore that side of the paper because that needs to be removed.
Thank you very much for that helpful background information. Members, do you have any questions? Councillor Bayes?
Yeah, I appreciate that explanation, but I can't quite understand why you want to drop fees. I can understand putting them up, but why would you want to drop them? Because expectation is they are the fees. The moment you start dropping them, I don't quite understand why you drop them if they're not statutory, if they're not required to have that fee.
The requirement is that we set licensing fees based on a cost recovery basis. So this model does mean that we're setting fees based on a true cost recovery basis. So it does seem strange. Nothing in life goes down, but it does seem strange. And I've been through the model with Elisa with a real fine tooth comb of, are you sure we're doing the right thing here? And it all levels out. That is the true cost of issuing a license, and that's what our fees and charges should be based on.
I had a question about the car parking fees, which you state in this report that there'd be no increase to standard fees, which we don't actually mention in the next report. So that's a little bit confusing.
So in the next report, this is why it's hard to not conflate, because it is a fee, isn't it, in the charge. So in the next report, it does say that we won't look to increase standard car parking charges. It would be the coastal resort.
It does, but not in the recommendation. So I think it's a little bit confusing to have it saying one thing one place and one thing another.
Okay, I will quickly read through that while the committee works through, but it was my understanding that that was clearly set out in option 1, but I will quickly read through now.
Okay. And is that cost recovery, you've also done a big benchmarking piece of work. Was that for the environmental health prices? And I wonder with whom you were benchmarking NMDC?
So the benchmarking is for the other environmental health fees and charges, things like the cost of a re-inspection for a food hygiene visit. So we've benchmarked against neighbouring councils on that piece of work.
Okay. Yeah. And is it possible to benchmark any of the other fees and charges, or are they too individual?
The ones that we have been able to benchmark, we have done. So those within environmental health that are benchmarkable, if that's a word, have been benchmarked. And then the licensing ones have been set based on that cost recovery model. So,
right. Yeah, okay, we'll come to that later. Lovely. Have members got any other questions about fees and charges? So magic one up.
So having a look through, I was looking at the cost to park at Holt Country Park. Seems awfully cheap versus the budget allocated for that park and the revenue that comes back on it. I wondered whether we might be able to explore there why that's not performing as it has previously. What's the issue? What's the blocker? I don't believe that £2.50, a slight increase, maybe a half day parking and a full day parking, would actually damage tourists and turn them away, especially from Holt. I'm sure spending £5 in Holt is no great thing, is it? But I do wonder whether we've actually looked at other parks to see what's comparable on that.
I have looked at other parks in terms of that. Eaton Park, I don't know if people are familiar with that in Norwich. It's a park that's run by Norwich City Council. And to park at Eaton Park is £2 for up to 4 hours, £5 for 5 hours, £6 for 6 hours, and then over 6 hours is £8. Sheringham Park is £6.50 for a 24-hour period or for the day. So, but in my mind, Eaton Park is a comparable destination for a family in terms of Holt Country Park, in terms of the play facility that's provided and those free activities that are there. Appreciate that we've invested significantly in Holt Country Park in recent years. But a lot of that is kind of behind the scenes investment. It's in our staff and welfare facilities. And actually, as a visitor to that park, it's not forward facing investment as such. The eco classroom that's going in is obviously £100,000 funded through the Hornsey 3 project. So that's sort of external funding. It will be a visible investment to the public though. But yeah.
Councillor Showers, would like to respond?
Absolutely. So I think that we have spoken previously about Holt Country Park being accessible financially for local people, but I think that's a really sensible suggestion that we look at potentially how we do charge there. It's a beautiful asset and we very much want it to be sustainable beyond this council. So if you're content, myself and Officer McCollum will take that away.
Okay.
And investigate that alongside Officer Cap so that we can see how best we can make sure that we're getting the best finance from it, but also what else we might need to do to draw more people there to spend more time and more money in Holt Country Park.
I'd absolutely welcome that, and I look forward to us protecting Holt Country Park for the future.
I was interested, do you pay to park at the other green flag woods areas that we have?
So Sadler's Wood in North Horsham does not have a car park at all. So it's mostly traversed on foot. It's very accessible. I don't believe that we do at Sheringham, but Holt Country Park has got far more there. Sadler's Wood is just the woodland. There aren't toilets or things there either, and neither is the one in Sheringham. So we've got more assets there. And a cafe.
Good. Councillor Housden.
Thank you. May I ask two questions? They're slightly separate. Is that
I'll
possible?
be generous, yeah.
Thank you. On a cost recovery basis, is there a surplus in any of these for the council, or are we just covering costs?
They aren't making a profit for the organisation. No, they are purely cost recovery. There is a legal case based in Westminster Council where they made a profit on their licensing fees and had to pay it back. So yeah, there is case law around this, around not making a profit on your licensing fees and charges.
Okay, thank you. The second question is, if we're looking at £1.05, are all our car park meters, do they all take debit cards? Because it's going to be really tedious finding a 5p piece. It won't go down very well.
Do you want to cover that in
Shall
this
we
paper?
cover that next time round?
We'll cover that in the next
About to
paper.
cover parking
Right,
in great
okay.
detail. Has anyone else got any questions? I must say, having the questions that we raised yesterday answered in advance was very helpful. I don't want to make it seem to outsiders that we don't have any questions, but I think we've had a very exhaustive plot through this. I mean, we did have quite a lot of questions actually about this report, and I just wondered if, without overburdening anybody, whether we could have had a little bit more explanation. It would have saved some of the questions that we had. I think we do. It is a good report, and it does have quite a lot of explanation. But we still managed to have an awful lot of questions about it. Thank you.
Obviously, I'm always happy to work with the committee in whichever capacity, because I find great benefit from sitting here bringing papers forward. I'm really grateful that having so much data in there has provoked so many questions, because normally that's quite overwhelming and I can understand why. So it just shows that we've got the layout quite right so you can drill down into it. If the committee have got something that they would like as a greater explanation, because obviously we'll do this again same time next year, then I'm more than happy to do that. Obviously, and I'm grateful that Officer Caps attended, because the shock that I had when I first took on the portfolio is that there are some things that we just can't make money from. We can only fairly charge. And there are other things that the government sets for us which are far below the true value of doing things, which we all know, surprisingly. So I'm more than happy if you've got an indication of what you would like added to it extra. I didn't see your questions that you raised with leisure. So
I don't know whether this is a formal recommendation, but it seemed to be the ones where there were variants was quite great. We didn't understand the reasons behind, and it wasn't always explained. For example, let's talk about the cost recovery and the increase in licensing fees, and where it was very different from before. So if we could have, much like you do in the financial reports, where I don't know what other people feel, this is my suggestion, where the variance is great, there could be a little bit more detail in the report. I don't think there needs to be a formal recommendation. That's just that would be, to me, but that would be a direction of travel. Everyone seemed quite happy with that informally. Yeah. It was a very good report. I mean, it has provoked a lot of conversation, so that is good. Lovely. We're crossing through this very rapidly. Car parks, fees and charges. I think we might have a bit of a conversation about this one. And I would again like to raise the point in the options considered. It doesn't say anything about the standard car parks not being raised, and I would like that. I think we all felt that that should be flagged very overtly. Anyway, would you like to introduce this?
Yep. So if you remember when we sat last year looking at car park fees and charges, we had to put our actual car parking fees up quite substantially, primarily because they'd not been put up for quite some time and we had quite high inflation costs to meet. At that point, the committee had suggested that they were more comfortable if we hadn't have had to do the standard town increase. So I was very mindful of that when we sat and did the car parking fee increase this year. I sat and went through it with my assistant director, Dan, and when we looked at doing a blanket 3.8% across the car parks, it meant that the standard car parks were having to be rounded up quite significantly to meet any kind of increase. So hearing what the committee said last time and knowing that I can't disproportionately overcharge on a standard car park morally, we've arrived at the conclusion where we are suggesting the 3.8%, but that would only have an impact on the coastal and the resort tariffs. So that's one side of it. If you look at paragraph 4.5, sorry, which outlines everything in option 1, it does say that the standard car parking charges remain unchanged. I'm happy for that to be actually worded within the recommendation to make sure that our inland towns are very aware that we are hearing what they're saying when things are getting quite tough economically. We know the cost of living crisis is still hitting. So I'm happy to change the wording of that one. The season ticket charge is an interesting one because obviously, Madam Chair, if you'll remember when we sat last year, we talked about it, and the reason the paper's coming back again is because we had previously looked at charges every 2 years. But when we spoke at the committee last time, it was felt that we needed to review it annually, and I think that was fair. So I'm apologising to everybody who's going to hear car parking charges until, well, for the foreseeable future on an annual basis. So if you remember when we looked at doing the season ticket charges last year, there were 2 options in front of you. One of them was a 50% increase, which would have made it more comparable. And the committee and myself weren't comfortable with doing such a large leap. So we chose to increase it by a smaller amount with the review, with the perception that we would come back again and review it to do more of a stepped increase. And that was your suggestion, Madam Chair. So we've looked at the increases and we've not felt that we need to do the large second part of the stepped increase. We need to think about our residents in this. So we're just suggesting an inflationary increase in option 5. No, sorry, in option 6, sorry. So those are the options. We've not done the larger increase that we were potentially looking to do this time last year. And that's with the support of the committee and obviously my colleagues in finance. The only thing that I did want to mention was we had discussed previously where a 7-day parking ticket you could get from, say, Fakenham, where it was far cheaper, and then use it to park in one of our coastal car parks at a reduced rate, because our 7-day parking tickets can be used across the district at any car park. So we had changed that. So where the standard charge isn't going up for the hourly rate, the 7-day charge will go up to be in line with everything else. So but you can use that across our car parks. So there we are.
Thank you.
Yes.
Councillor Hankins.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the options, I think it's going to be very difficult to recommend an increase that's less than 3.8%. As I understand it, we're looking at a council tax increase of in the region of 5%. So I think it's unfair that council taxpayers that don't have vehicles and drive cars subsidise car driving. So I personally think that the recommendation should be a minimum increase of 3.8%. That is CPI. It's well understood that that's what's happening in the economy. Anything less, I think, as I say, penalises those members or those residents that are paying council tax and don't have a car and don't use council tax, don't use car parking facilities. That's the first point. The second point is, I welcome the fact that from Miss Apps that things are now being done on a cost recovery basis. Do we have any information as to how much the car parking facilities across North Norfolk cost to maintain? What are we looking at in terms of a cost compared to the charge? Now, this came up when we were looking at car parking facilities in the past and charges, and there was a big debate about, well, there's a lot of trouble to get this information out, so on and so forth. I have had the pleasure of convening with Mr. Eric Seward, who was the financial officer in the last administration, and he assured me that this exercise was done 2 to 3 years ago, and it did expose a number of parking facilities that were not recovering their costs. So I think there's two issues here. I think personally, I would recommend a minimum increase of 3.8% on that justification. And I think we need to understand how much the direct cost, I'm not talking about indirect costs, I'm talking about direct costs of maintaining a car park are.
So on page 39 of the report in the budget monitoring, at the top of the page, there is the overview of the costs and essentially the profit on page 39. So the benefit of car parking fees is that we don't have to abide by the same rules in terms of licensing, which we have to offer licenses. So we can look at this to generate income, and the money that we generate from these pays for things like public toilets. It helps support our leisure assets, our beautiful chroma pier, all the things that we don't have to do lawfully, all the nice things that we do. So the car parking fees goes to pay for that. The difference that we have between the types of car parks, where we have the standard inland car parks, the standard inland car parks, on the whole, are never going to be huge income generators. They're there to support our high streets and our market towns. And then we have the two steps. So we have the resort and we have the coastal, which are there predominantly and generate the income that we can use to pay for the things that we enjoy as a district.
Mhm.
I understand
Hankins again.
that, councillor. However, it is good business practice to align charges with costs. I know it's not mundane, it's just good business practice, quite frankly. And secondly, could you point out to me where I can find the cost of these car parks?
So if you look on page 39 at the top, we have got the line there talks about the first line where it says premises is business rates, electric and other things that we have to pay to keep them running. And then the supplies and services, the second line talks about we've got season tickets and things in there, so we can do a greater breakdown. But the committee has had a larger breakdown of the running costs before. As far as I'm aware, we don't currently have a car park which is making a substantial loss. Once we get the car parking figures, we'll be able to look at some of our inland car parks. But we've also got things on there such as the parking enforcement, where we have those things. Some of them obviously don't have much there at all. Some of them will have greater levels of maintenance. I know there's one in North Walsham, which is particularly difficult to maintain. So I'm happy to, at a future date, bring back another car parking review, but it's not been that long since the committee has reviewed the car parks.
Thank you, Councillor Shire. I appreciate the fact that's an overall number. It doesn't discriminate between car parks that cost a lot to maintain and others that don't. That's the point I'm making.
Oh, that's totally fine. So if you would like to have another car parking review, I know the committee's already had a car parking review. We can do that exercise again. We won't be doing that this financial year. We've got a very short timeline now before we have to get the budget set, depending on what the government throws at us. But if the committee would like to next year look at that, then I'm completely happy to do that. Just be aware that the landscape of local government will have changed at that point. And we need to be mindful of what that will lead to in a future authority.
Okay,
I'd recommend that
you recommend it.
that
Okay,
happens. Thank you, Chair.
we'll bear that in mind. I think Councillor Heinrich, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, thank you, officers, for a very thorough, well-presented report. I certainly welcome the recommendation to maintain the same levels of charges in the market towns. I think that is essential in maintaining the local economy. I do have a couple of issues with the resort and coastal and the strange 5p that creeps in. Nobody carries 5p coins these days. These need to be rounded up or down appropriately, at least the nearest 10p. Some people still like paying with cash, strange as it may seem. And most people don't like paying by app, so I don't want to go down that rabbit warren. Coming back to the issue on costs of particular car parks in terms of maintenance, surely we should be looking at spreading the cost of maintenance across all our car parks, seeing the estate as a whole. That gets round the issue of some. We know the one in North Walsham. It's built over a gasworks tar pit. It's never going to be a simple one to maintain. It's costs are going to be high, and it's not a great revenue generator either for some obscure reason. People are too lazy to walk up Short Hill, but it's another matter. So I'm not convinced by my colleagues' arguments there, but for 3.8%, the public won't like it. Most of us always regard themselves as cash cows, but inflation is what it is. We're stuck with it. There's people far higher up than we are who are busily trying to supposedly reduce it. We'll wait and see after a fortnight's time, of course. So I welcome the report and the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Penfold.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, certainly to echo Councillor Heinrich there on welcoming the report, and thank you for it. It's an excellent one. And the recommendation. Can I just get clear what that recommendation is, though? So we're saying that it's a 3.8% on the hourly charges for the coastal and resort car parks, not the inland ones, but then the 3.8% season ticket increase across all car parks? Or is that just for resort and coastal as well, or is that for inland? The season
Okay,
ticket?
so I think you're conflating potentially two things. So the car park charges, you're correct. So 3.8, but not on the standard inland car parks. But with that comes the 7-day ticket, which you can buy at the machine and use across the car parks. And we'll be doing the flat rate across all car parks for that. Previously, we'd
Okay.
found a discrepancy where you could get it cheaper inland, and reduce some of your long-term parking costs. And then the season tickets, which is separate, 3.8, yeah.
Across,
They're all the same, yeah.
they're all the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I'm not sure I personally would have the appetite for another car park review. I think we've done that. And I think the committee, is happy with what we did last year. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Got Councillor Cushing next.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I mean, I don't appreciate the points made by Councillor Heinrich and Councillor Penfold about not increasing fees on market towns in particular. We're in my hat as a Fakenham councillor. We need to do all we can in order to encourage people to visit the town, which at times, certain times of the day, struggles, particularly in the afternoon. So that is welcome indeed. Coming back to the point of Councillor we've made about a car park review, I think that actually might be quite helpful next year, because as we go into LGR, I know questions will be formed about what parts of the estate may go with a new unitary and may end up going elsewhere. I know there are some who are already salivating at the thought of car parks heading in their direction, which I suspect they may be disappointed in, but I think that might be a useful thing for us to actually do as well. The final point, and you've sort of anticipated this, and I'm glad all these years of badgering you are starting to pay off, Councillor Shires. But if you look at the recommendations, I do think it would be helpful in there if we actually put what the monetary value of those recommendations equates to, because I know the information's in the report. We have to ferret around to try and find it. So I think that could be, so just for future reference, I think something we could do. Thank you.
No, that's absolutely fine. I think the question of LGR is going to be an interesting one. And aside from the very attractive car parking fees, we've also got the second homes income as well. So we are quite an attractive partner, I think, to other councils currently. So I think whilst I know the car parking review is great, I understand that. If we compare it to fees across the district, other places that do charge a little bit more than us, and I understand that too. So I think what we should look at, if you don't mind, would be potentially when we start having the conversations about what the estate looks like. I would welcome support from the committee on that, because it's, as much as car parks is a good income generator for this council to enable us to do the nice things, we've also got a lot of other assets which I think we will need to have an oversight to make sure that they're protected, if they need to be protected for local people, because they don't income generate as much. Because I know if I was looking at it, I'd be looking at the things that would bring in the most money to balance the budget. And you'd have to look critically at the things that don't. So I don't know whether or not there's a wider conversation to be had when we know more what's coming. I know it's not going to be till, we hope it's March, where we find out what we're getting. But rather than tie the committee into focusing on one thing, potentially we could be a little bit more fluid on assets for LGR, because it's going to be quite a chaotic next 12 months, I should think.
If I may briefly respond, absolutely. I mean, Fakenham Town Council already asked me to send them a list of assets NNDC own in the town, which actually stretches to a page and a half, would you believe? So I think that would be certain. It's a dialogue that people want to have, and we're going to have regardless. So yeah, that would be very good. Happy to participate.
Do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to clarify on Councillor Cushing's recommendation about including the pound amount that the recommendations might, that the increases might attract. There is an assumption of the volumes, so there's no guarantee that increasing by 3.8% will give us a set pound amount of extra revenue. I just wanted to clarify that, so that could raise expectations. It could be more, it could be less.
Yeah, I mean, all I'm saying, that's a very valid point, but it would just simply, and we could put the caveat in there, but I think in terms of we have to make a decision on recommendations, just to see it all in one table, so to speak, would make it a lot easier for us.
Thank you. Councillor Housden?
Just firstly, my earlier point. I mean, if you travel on the continent, by comparison, Britain's in the dark ages in the context of use of apps, phones and cards, and you can walk on a tram, flash your card, walk off wherever you want to stop, flash your card, and it just deducts the money. But I don't expect we'll ever get to that stage in this country at the moment. In the context of 2.2, and I'm going back to the medium-term financial plan 2.2, page 107, we're looking at a deficit close on 1 million this year, 518,000 the next, and then it's going up again. Have you introduced any inflationary figures into those figures on here in order to arrive at the £500,000 figures?
So at the point the budget was set, we put it on what we would assume, with what we would know at those points. We can't adjust in year as much as I would like to. So that's what we'd agreed in February.
So for 26/7, okay, we're coming down, but at 27/8, 28, 29, we're going up to 600,000. But that's just a fixed figure that's gone in historically.
Can you give me the page? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, page 107, item 2.2. How have you come to those figures? Have you put inflation in? So have you done a forward planned increases on the car park charges?
We will have made some assumptions in it, yes, but we won't have assumed the increase to car parking fees because we can't do that. We can only do it on the decisions that we know. We can do it on things like where we think there may be pay increases and things like that. But at the time we set the budget, we also, when we were setting the budget, we didn't foresee at the time we'd started the initial conversations prior to 12 months ago how ruthless the government were going to be.
No,
although that we knew that in February. So this is the budget that we set last February. So when we look to what we're doing now, very much so, I'm looking at closing the 900,000. That's what I'm looking at right now.
Yeah.
But I'm very aware of in the background that there are other things that are going to have a huge impact. So please do not think that putting the fees and charges up for the car parks, all the fees and charges across the council are going to close that gap. They're not going to, but they will help.
Okay, so I hate to labour the point, but that makes a review of the car parks and costs, maintenance costs and charges even more important, does it not, if we can't go forward?
So the review would fit for the 27-28 budget. It wouldn't fit for the 26-27 budget. And by 27-28, we're going to have far more going on overall. As I said, I'm very happy if that's what the committee wants to focus on. I know you've got a very, very tight schedule, and you've got a very, very jam-packed plan of what you focus on annually. And if your focus next year is going to be that you want to look at car parks, I'm happy to go with that. My preference would be our wider estate overall, because I think we've got far bigger problems to protect North Norfolk's assets and communities in the space of LGR.
Can we debate this later, Councillor Housden?
Sure.
It's slightly deflecting us from the
Sorry,
the fees
okay.
and charges.
Yeah.
And it is an important point, but it might not be just for this moment. That's all right. Councillor Gray.
Very frank thing. I hope. It's okay to show the 3 point, but we know when we look at the round up discrepancy. It's 0.3% income. Then you increase volume, but that is for that. It's clear. Because obviously it has to differ, I understand. Not everyone can fan 5 pence. But we have to use what we have to use. So mine has to be that.
Yes, absolutely. I have done the maths. So if the committee would like to know those, I can give you them after the meeting. What they will show you is that in order to round up slightly, some are slightly over the 3.8%, but some are slightly under 2, because obviously while 5p isn't a fan, and I've checked that our machines take 5p's, nobody's going to want to pay in pennies and tuppence. So we also need to be quite mindful that to do an increase, we have had to go up where we are naturally rounding up.
I mean, to echo that point, I did think that would be a useful addition to the tables. Also, I felt it would, if we could pull out the financial gain from these increases into a tabular form as well, because I find it quite difficult to wading through different paragraphs to find out how much this would make and how much that would make. And obviously, we're not talking about the costs at all, but so it's not a full business case. But I did think that pulling those numbers together would be helpful.
There is a table on 113
Hmm.
under 4.9, which shows each option, the percentage increase in the estimated additional income. But what it doesn't then link is the option to, so you have to remember what the detail of the option is. So I'm more than happy next time we discuss this to make sure the tables are linked together.
Yes, I think it's a linking rather than an information gap. Does anyone have any other points to make? So are people content with the recommended options of 1 and 6, which is increasing car park charges apart from standard car parks by inflation 3.8% and increasing season tickets by the same percentage, 3.8%? Is everyone content with that?
Are we just making that amendment just to make that clearer? To the inland.
Okay, so we need to rewrite the recommendation. So to say that these, we're recommending options 1 and 6, but we want to clarify that the increase does not apply to standard car parks.
Inland car parks, yeah.
Inland car
Yeah.
parks.
Can we add except for the 7-day ticket?
Yeah.
Sorry to
So
make
you're
it
talking about the
complicated.
hourly.
Yeah,
Yes.
so
So do we need to word it now and vote on it?
Yeah, I think we do really, Chair. Yeah, but if you're happy for us just to add that line, just not to include standard car parks within that option 1.
Yes.
Yeah, we can do that and then vote on that.
The only other point I'd like to make is I'd like that decision about standard car park increases not to be a function of rounding up. I want it to be a positive statement that we want to protect the market town. So somewhere in here it says that we're not doing it because we don't want to round it up. It's too difficult, but actually we want to do it because we want to protect our standard car parks, our inland towns. So I don't think that needs to go into the recommendation, but I do think we need to be very clear about that. So for next time, it's not a question of rounding up or not, it's a question of protecting. Is everyone happy with that? Okay.
Madam Chairman.
Yes.
Could I also say that we add to the recommendation that the charges in Coastal Resort be adjusted up and down as appropriate to avoid the use of 5 pence, so that the minimum, it is always around to 10 pence, that is sort of money that people will actually carry with them.
What percentage of people pay by cash for these car parks?
I have got that somewhere. If you could bear with me a few moments. It is a question that I've already asked, and we asked for it when we did the enforcement contract. The difficulty is that if we're going to, it will be a larger increase if we're going to round up beyond the 5p. And that's why we aimed for the 5 pence rather than the larger. So last year we did a 10 pence on standard, 20 pence on resort and 30 pence on coastal. So it was quite a large increase last year, and it would have to go up by a larger percentage, although it wouldn't financially look like a lot. An extra 5 pence doesn't feel like a lot, but it's a larger percentage. I can run the maths if you've got time.
What do members feel? Do they feel they want to make this brief detour to? Yes, I mean 755 or 465. Some of the numbers are quite awkward, aren't they?
Chair, I might suggest we ask officers to look at, say, the 30 minutes at £1, 1 hour in resort at 180. And we do similar with the other two in the resort, either up 5p up or 5p down on each one of them. Probably 5p up on one, 5p down on the
So
other.
if you can get a clear indication of what it is you would like, then this paper, this isn't the deciding paper, it will have to go to council. So I can have extra figures put in it for council. My concern is that we're not then doing a fair reflection overall, because it means that some points will be increased and some points won't be increased. So the aim is to make it as easy as possible, rather than saying it'll cost you this for an hour, but then it will go up. It has to be fair across. So there's an hourly rate. So sorry, I'm babbling a little bit. So there is an hourly rate. So the hourly rate for this financial year is 90 pence in your standard car parks, 140 in the resort, and £2.10 in coastal. So we put those hourly rates up last year by 10, 20 and 30 pence on the previous year. And that's what we used to do the calculation beyond your initial 30 minutes. So we need to be quite clear on what it is that we want to do, because otherwise it's going to become awfully convoluted.
I accept that, Madam Chair, but we set ourselves up there for the resort car parks of being downright annoying to the car park user, and that we don't want. It's better that there's some slight adjustment, even if it puts us very slightly out on the hourly rate, to make it simple and easy for the user. The cash payers generally tend to be older people who can get very annoyed, as well as being annoying, as I am.
Okay.
So we do need to think about the end user just as much as the absolute financial calculations.
My question is, how many of those machines give change? Because an awful lot of machines I've used don't give change. So if you haven't got 5p, you're going to put 10p in, and you're not going to get any change.
Okay. Councillor Rouse, do you have a question?
Would it be possible for a parking app to be established? It allows people to pre-book parking, and it offers another way in, accessing payment options.
So we have three methods of paying. We have cash, we have contactless, and we have a cashless parking app. So last year, the committee supported me in charging Hornbeam Road car park, and we haven't installed a machine there. That's just by the cashless app. I have got some rough data. I'm just trying to get through it in terms of the balance. But at this time last year, the app transactions were 149,000 transactions on the app. So that was just under £500,000. So there is a shift, but we do still have quite a balance of cash and card payments. I'm just trying to find the cash amounts for you, if you can bear with me.
So who's in favour of Councillor Heinrich's proposal and Councillor Housden's proposals that we round these up to make it more user friendly? And this would then upset the 3.8%.
Yeah.
Right, that looks like
I mean, I think you could put some wording in around making it more user friendly and just allow that then to.
So the recommendation would be for the options 1 and 6, but with the proviso that there are 4. Okay, so it's still 3.8% is the aspiration, but in order to make it more user friendly for our residents, we would ask that you round it up to nearest 10, or round it up or down. Councillor Gray.
I hate to be radical, but those machines haven't given change in the history of my life. And maybe not as long as some, but it's reasonable so far. And also, if you put in 10p in and not getting 5p back, people have been doing it for years and years and years. It really is just almost a moot point, isn't it? I don't see the logic in that. You're going to go there, you've done it for the last 25, 30, 40 years or whatever that you've been doing this. It's a minor quibble point as far as I can see. Recommendation of option 1 and option 6, that's where we're at.
Okay, I think you're an outlier, Councillor Gray, actually. So
So just to be really, really mindful, if we look at the rounding to tenpence, you're looking at closer to 5.8 in table 4, well, table 12 under 4.7.3. So we need to figure out where you are. Are you 5.8 or are you 3.8? So we're quibbling over the 2%. I'm comfortable with 3.8 if the committee is bolder and minded that they want to move towards the 5.8 because it means that people won't have to carry 5 pences. That's at the committee's gift. I'm not in that space, but if there's an overwhelming push, I'm sure that when we come to full council, but you'd be more than happy to support the 5.8. I think we're in a tricky space now because whilst it isn't a lot, the North Norfolk News headline is going to be 5.8% increase.
And half the population are paying by app, so they would be paying a 5.8% increase unnecessarily because it wouldn't matter to them whether it was half a p because it comes out of their debit card.
Yeah, I do sort of worry about the optics of 5.8%, considering the cost of living and, you know, I don't see that the public response will be very positive.
Okay, so given that we're looking at a higher percentage increase, does that change your proposal, Councillor Heinrich?
I still seems to me, as Councillor has pointed out, that putting some slight changes, 5p down, 5p up on others, the fundamental difference will be minimal. But then again, do we know whether all our machines will actually take 5 pence coins? If we were to stick with that, they all take 10p's.
That was my first question, if I'm honest, and I did walk around the North Walsham ones checking, that they all did because I wouldn't have wanted to sit before you knowing that we would have to then invest tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds into new parking meters. They do take 5 pences. Not that people mainly carry 5 pences, but I would like to just note, and thank you for bringing it up, that we're talking about the people that are carrying cash. And I don't think it would be fair, and I think that's a fair point, that those who pay by contactless card and those who pay by the app would then also have to pay a higher rate because we're thinking about people not wanting to carry 5 pence. But I will stop interfering with the committee because it's your recommendation.
Councillor Bailey.
I'm happy with the 3.8 and keeping the 1.05 in there because people are paying apps, and I do understand the maths, but then we then get into the problem of what percentage of people are staying a 1 hour, 3 hour, 5 hour. So obviously the roundings, then you then have to look into that percentage as well. So I would then put it to have the 5 pence, and the next year we'll probably increase it again to the £1.10.
I mean, I do think the 3.8 is a sufficient increase for our population, given that cost of living pressures is.
Chair, is there anything on a computer program you've got where you could just whack in those figures and see what it knocks out? So if you round it up on the table, can you put that into a spreadsheet very quickly and bang out what that's going to be as a percentage?
That would be? What?
So the calculation, I can do that manually, but it would be improper of me to take up committee time to run the manual calculation right now.
Yeah.
I think the thing that we would need to look at is what the outcome of it is, because if the outcome is that we would see a change, because then we're going to need to know how long people come into our car parks and stay for.
I understand that.
So there'd be a wider calculation. So I don't think the percentage calculation would do justice of the overall impact.
Okay.
If that's fair.
I think there's still inequity because someone's going to be suffering a 5.8% increase, even though across the board there's someone else who's suffering a 2.1% increase. And I think, they still had that cost pressure on them. So weighing all these things up, what are everyone's views about Councillor Heinrich's proposal?
So I'm happy to stay with a 1.05. Yeah.
Okay. So do we then have to vote against Councillor Heinrich's very excellent proposal?
Yeah, I would say so. Chair, yeah, I'll vote who's in favour.
Okay, so Councillor Heinrich's proposing that or you could withdraw it. Which would you prefer?
Given the views, I'll withdraw, but can I ask that when Cabinet reviews this, they do consider the aspect of the difficulties of having 5p coins, and I'll leave it at that.
Right, so do you want that to be
Okay.
part of the formal recommendation?
Yes.
Okay, so do you add that to the formal recommendation? That we ask Cabinet to be mindful
Yeah, we're going to have that on.
of the inconvenience caused? Okay. So, all that going back to, we are happy with recommendations option 1 and 6. Yes, and all in favour, please,
And you've slightly reworded it, haven't you, Emma?
with the recommendation that the
Yeah,
Cabinet,
I'll mention about the standard car parks, obviously been mentioned within option 1 there. Yeah.
but also that Cabinet are aware that
And the
the,
cabinet are aware and then
Parks.
review that.
okay, lovely, okay, are we all in favour then? Lovely, you happy with that? Good. So, running a bit ahead of schedule, but do you think it's time for a cup of coffee? After that spirited debate, I think. Okay, so we'll reconvene at 11. Thank you. Good. Thank you. This morning. It's rather nice, isn't it?
It is.
It's very sort of pumpkin coloured.
Mistake you for a lieutenant.
Forgot about that. Thank you for putting me in my place, Councillor Varley. Okay, so now it's agenda item 14, Net Zero Strategy Review and Related Climate Reports. Very timely, given that COP30 is, as we speak, meeting in Brazil. So, are you proposing to introduce it rather than give a presentation?
Yes,
Or
thank you.
not really introduce it at all, because we'll have all read your wonderful report.
But thank you, Madam Chairman. I mean, firstly, it's really nice to be here. I think it's about 18 months since I sat before this committee, so long overdue, and it's nice to be here this morning. I think the reports do speak for themselves. I'm glad that we've got 40 minutes to go through this. I think that's sufficient time for a robust, focused discussion. There are many reports, many documents as part of this report before you this morning. What I thought I would do is give greater focus to the carbon footprint report first. And then for the second half, we can focus on the policy documents. So focusing on the 24-25 footprint, firstly, it's quite clear to see that the trajectory is going in the right direction, and aspects we have incorporated within our net zero strategy and action plan are actually working to decrease the amount of carbon emissions this organisation outputs each year. There's some really positive points within the 24-25 footprint report, as I'm sure you've seen. Notably, fleet emissions have been reduced by 8 tonnes from the previous year, and that's 26 tonnes from the original baseline figures produced in 2019. Now, this showcases the work we have done, solar on some of our fleet for the compactor mechanism, and also using electric vehicles for our property services team, which is actually charged via the officers' PVs. Another notable one is staff travel. This has been reduced by 12 tonnes on the previous year and 73 tonnes from the original baseline figures produced in 2019. This is due to having the 2 electric fleet vehicles for our officers to use when travelling around the district on business. This has been incredibly successful, and we are now leasing more vehicles. On that point, I was talking to Councillor Toy this morning, and he was saying how he frequently uses these vehicles. They're not just for officer use, they are for councillors as well. So if you are thinking of travelling around the district on meetings and errands, do think about booking these out. It's really important. We should all be taking responsibility for the combined emissions and also for our personal emissions as well. I'm sure councillors will note on page 9 and 10 of the report, this shows the increase in the amount of electricity our assets are now generating, and in turn, this actually decreases carbon emissions. So this is due to the fantastic solar projects that we have implemented across our state, notably at the Reef Leisure Centre in Sheringham and the Victory Swim and Fitness Centre in North Walsham. That is a reduction of 92 tonnes from the previous year, which is quite large. I'm sure you will all have noticed, though, that the footprint has increased by 5% from the previous year. It's really important to note that carbon reduction is never a straight linear story. It will fluctuate, it will go up, it will go down some years, and the increase, notably for this year's, is the fact that we are able to ascertain more accurate data. And that can only be a positive, because now we have that accurate data, and therefore we can really pinpoint and come up with precise projects to implement and decrease those carbon emissions. Another notable point for the increase is that we have embarked on a very important set of coastal works, and the carbon implications have been included on that, but that is only a one-time implication. It won't roll into the future years. Another aspect is also the purchase of temporary accommodation. That's really important. We do that to tackle the housing and homelessness crisis. Obviously, that does increase our footprint, but because we purchase those houses, that means that we can now do very good retrofitting works. So it's all very nuanced, but I think I will leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Varley. Councillor Penfold.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for this, Councillor Varley. Really good report. Lots of good graphics in there, easy to understand. And thank you for all the work you're doing. So just a couple of questions, if I may, on that increase this year, and you mentioned partly due to the coastal works we were doing in Munsley and Cromer. So I hadn't realised, and that's my fault, I think, that such projects were included in this calculation. So clearly we will have projects going forward, albeit not these ones, but others. So my two questions, if I may. Firstly, what influence do we have, if any, on contractors, that are then delivering these projects for us? Do we have conversations with them? Do we vet them in terms of their, emissions and all the rest of it? And can we have any leverage there?
Thank you for your question. Yeah, it's a very good question. And yes, we can influence as far as the tender process, which we have done in previous times. We want to work with contractors who have good eco credentials, but I'm sure Councillor Rawlings could take us through that a little bit more, please.
So obviously we have the new procurement rules that have come in now that allow you to take into account more than just the end price. So we can use the sustainability that the contractor gives you moving forward. And also this is where the climate literacy training across the office has come in, that we have people of all different grades and lines of work in the building who've been involved now in climate literacy training and know to take that into account when they're looking to award a contract.
So just to come back on that, I don't wish to appear rude, but do we genuinely? I mean, we're under cost pressures all over the place. So are we genuinely looking at the environmental mitigations as opposed to costs, and not just thinking about when there's pressures on finance, not just it's the cheapest one that's going to get the job here? That is a genuine process we're going through?
The evaluation criteria now can certainly be set in that way. I can't say that I've seen every procurement exercise that's gone on in the building, but certainly people have had the training that's pushing them towards giving that due consideration when they're awarding a contract.
It's really important that we do that. That has to be that balance of finance, but also we must note that emissions are a huge thing, and if we put a monetary value on those, then that has implications. So it's really good that we have a new procurement process which is looking to tackle and address that.
Thank you, Councillor Fitch-Tillett.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. Cromer Munsley scheme was actually tendered and approved under my watch, and I can confirm that CO emissions were considered at the time. The contract was awarded to Balfour Beatty, who do an enormous amount of work in respect of carbon capture. They do a monthly dial-in online progress report, and also to other parts of the work that they do. And I know that they have done a particular workshop in respect of carbon capture. So rest assured, we did the best we could with that one.
Am I able to just come in on that point? Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald, for those comments. I mean, that is the case. These works came before Cabinet numerous times, and there was always a wealth of information on the net zero carbon impact. And it was quite clear that they were looking, where possible, to appease and mitigate the emissions of that. But unfortunately, these works obviously do have those implications, but we can't not do the works. It's really important that we tackle our coastal erosion in this area. But it is important to note that, yes, these really good positive works does have an implication for carbon emissions.
Councillor Cushing?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Adam Varley. Sorry, Councillor Varley, for your report. I do want to challenge a little bit, if I may, because if we look at the report, when this administration took power in 2019 and declared its climate change emergency, look on page 152. If we look at the carbon emissions of that year compared with this year, and it's hardly moved. Indeed, one was being naughty. One might look when you took control and took your role as a cabinet member. It's actually shot up since 2023. So, I mean, though obviously I support attempts to reduce carbon emissions, I think Councillor Penfold's point is pertinent, that we do need to look at how much this is costing in terms of what we're going to get out of it. And we may move that into when we look at the future plans for next year. But one of the concerns I have is the contextualization of what we do here in terms of global. And I know it's very hard to put a small council in terms of global context, but by my calculations, looking at Google, we produce, you said down there, about 5,000 tons of CO2 a year. That's what China produces in 12 seconds. So these are really small, very small increments. One would argue on a global scale, make no real difference at all, sadly. And the same actually could be said for the United Kingdom. That's not, I'm a climate change denier, I'm certainly not, and I would certainly support all economic attempts to reduce carbon emissions as we've done elsewhere. But I do think some contextualization needs to be added to these reports when we look at these things.
Thank you for your comments and your questions. I'm really proud what this Lib Dem administration has done. And when it came into power, as you put it, in 2019, one of the first things we did was pledge a climate emergency. It would appear that the Conservative administration was never going to do that. And if you look at the Conservative-run Norfolk County Council, it still isn't doing that. So maybe you need to ask your Norfolk County Council colleagues to urge that point. But moving on, Councillor, yeah, I know the point that maybe in the grand scheme of things, NNDC's carbon emissions are very minute. I mean, I'm always going on about, if you put it in the context of North Norfolk, the overall emissions by this council is 1%. About 1%. So that leaves us 99% for the rest of the district. So what do? Well, we have to influence. We have to showcase all the fantastic things we are doing. And we are doing some great things. We are investing in solar, you know, and we have our 500k budget, but actually we're doing some of these projects via external funding. So it's not costing the council or indeed council taxpayers any money. But what it is showing is the benefit in the reduction of the overall costs of these facilities. And it's showing them the benefit of how they could have systems like this in their houses or in their businesses. And we are working with businesses. We have a fantastic Make My House Green scheme, which is focused on SMEs and notably households as well. So it's really important that we continue to push the climate change net zero agenda and do as much as we can to influence and facilitate. Another notable thing is that we are fully embarking with government on the Bacton energy hub scheme. You know, as little as what we can do with that. We are hosting meetings. We are very much getting involved in the discussion, and that's going to be a huge benefit to Norfolk, but for the rest of the country as well. So I think we're doing some really good positive things. And I know, Councillor, you're still yet to do your full carbon literacy training. You've only done the 1 hour session. So if you would like some more context, you are more than welcome to do that training. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may respond, anyone who reads a paper doesn't need to go on a 7 or 8 hour training session to understand the issues of climate change in terms of doing that. Just to correct one point, you're saying it's not costing people here any money. Actually, the grant is coming from central government. It is costing us money because that comes out of our taxes that we pay anyway. And that leads into a wider debate, a national debate, which we don't need to go into here today. The point I'm just making is we need to contextualise what we do here at the council. There's a lot of beating of chests. One might argue that declaring climate change as emergency. Some would argue that's virtue signalling. Some don't, and some Conservative councils have declared climate change emergencies. But the point I'm just making, we need to look at that in terms of that. It's more about influencing than it is actually achieving very much. That's the point I'm probably making.
Okay.
Noted. Thank you.
Councillor Heinrich?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. With the case of, we may only make a small impact, but many people making a small impact overall has a very large impact. And we should all be doing what we can to reduce our carbon footprint. Now, I know I'm guilty of running a diesel vehicle. I feel guilty about that, but it happens to serve my needs. But we need to look carefully at what we're doing. Solar panels on car parks, excellent. What we don't want is solar panels spread over tens of thousands of acres of productive farmland. That is the lunacy, and it doesn't get any real public support either. Where I would like to say is pushing is through, say, the War Home Scheme or similar, is to get far more subsidised solar panels onto buildings, in particular industrial buildings. It seems crazy that we've got quite a good estate of industrial premises, all of which should be encouraged to have solar panels. Let's get industry decarbonised in the district if we can. The other thing is just a bit of a question on the Warm Homes Scheme. There is a problem, obviously, with insulating properly older properties, and we've just heard in the press this scandal of all those properties done 10, 12 years ago under previous government schemes that are now suffering from mould and damp because they didn't take account of the fact that old buildings need to breathe. Can I just be assured that every building we are giving grants to has been properly evaluated and that the solutions to it will not cause future problems? Thank you.
We're very lucky that we administer most of our grants through the Norfolk Warm Homes Scheme, which is run on our behalf by a consortium, including us and Broadland, South Norfolk, Bretland and Kings Lynn. And it's a very experienced team delivering that package. And they have shied away from internal and external wall insulation due to all these extra problems and have concentrated on floor and loft insulation and solar panels. They have only 2 contractors that they work with, who they've long established work with and who are very trusted, and they carry out inspections after each installation to make sure that the customer is happy. And because they've been going on for so long now, they have got case studies now going back several years where they've revisited properties that they've retrofitted several years ago. So the Norfolk Warm Homes Scheme is usually held up as an exemplar by the government when they're looking at how the things should be run. And the gentleman that runs it is often called in to speak to other councils who are looking to run their own schemes.
Thank you. That's excellent news. Thank you.
Councillor Penfold.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for letting me come back in. I am a big fan of benchmarking, but I'm not sure benchmarking North Norfolk District Council with China is necessarily that helpful in this situation. Can I just, it is about collective responsibility. and individual responsibility as well. And can I just urge councillors to push the grants that are available. There's £500 available to each household if they were to take up the Make My House Green offer. There's a fantastic government scheme around at the minute for £7,500 towards your air source heat pumps. We took advantage of that as a family, and it's fantastic. Really, really good thing. So that's up till 2028, I think. So there are lots of initiatives there that I think, we ourselves can push to our communities because there are financial incentives. So that was just a comment, but I have a question as well before Councillor Varley comes back. So I just noted on page 155, we were talking about exploring options for removing Holt Country Park's diesel generators. So just wondered what options have been explored and where we might be with that to replace those. So just that comment first about schemes available and then that question.
Well, firstly, I note your comments. I think it's really important that, as local members, we are local champions for our communities. And I think we all must do our part to ensure that communities, individuals have that wealth of knowledge on external grant funding, useful tips and advice. So that's what we all must be doing. But certainly as a council organisation, that is what we're doing as well. And I get quite a lot of emails about solar PV and air source heat pumps, for example, and whether they need to go through the planning process for that. And that's something actually I'm working with my team and with planning to see if we can just get some really helpful advice to ensure that people are aware about the ins and outs of that. I think it's really important that we help facilitate really, stellar information and advice.
Officer Rawlings, did you want to come back in?
I'll take the Holt Country Park. It's certainly a tricky site. We have an ongoing project to try and get electricity to the site, which obviously, as we purchase on a renewable tariff, would be a good source of energy. In terms of renewables, we have had several contractors come out and look to see if they can do some sort of solar in there, but obviously the tree canopy interferes with the coverage. We're also looking at several different designs of wind turbine to see whether any of those would work. Again, trees don't help. So our other option would be to switch to a different sort of fuel for the generators, and we can look at, they will run on biofuel. So that would be our last option there if the others prove. Or it could be some combination of them all. There's not always just one solution.
Yeah, just noting the Holt Country Park question in the budget monitoring, it was in the capital programme. But as always, getting utilities to places is the biggest issue we've got. And as the committee will know, UK Power Network are not the easiest company to work with. And we've had those issues when we've talked about having fast charging electric vehicle charging points as well. So there's a role for the larger networks as well to play in helping us reduce our emissions. And Councillor Varley and myself have spoken quite frequently about our frustration of UK Power Network on many levels. So UK Power Network have got a huge role to play in helping us decarbon some of our assets.
Yeah, just to comment on that point, they have a huge part to play, and unfortunately, it is impinging on some of those projects we want to do at the moment. So, we want to press ahead with things, but unfortunately, at no fault of our own, we are being held up. But we keep pushing, we keep trying to look into other options, and we're doing everything we can on that point.
So with reference to the carbon footprint, is tourism included in industry? Because I did a quick calculation of what tourism, the footprint would be, and it comes out at the same, depending on how conservative you are, not dissimilar to either transport or farming. So I wondered, has that been included in the industry section?
I'd have to check that one out. These are central government figures that we're provided with of their district.
Right.
Because it might away.
Could you take that away? Because I'd be interested, because it might be, if it was an addition, then it might have an impact. Super. So have we had sufficient Councillor Bayes.
Yeah, thank you for the report. I just have a couple of points, really key ones for me from where I live and the parishes that surround the area of Stalham, is the actual lack of infrastructure regarding bus or any transport out of Stalham. We have people who go to work, obviously, because work, we all know, the majority of it is out of Stalham. So people have to transport themselves out of Stalham. You've got post-16 education. Most people will have to get out of Stalham to go to either North Walsham, Norwich, or Great Yarmouth. There's a lack of that, and there's a lack of joining up. So if you're going to influence anyone at all, I think county council is probably where you need to start, because quite clearly, if you're going to tackle this, we need to get vehicles off the road. And at the moment, most households, as we know, will have 2 vehicles. And the argument for that is one goes in one direction to work, the other one goes into the other. So I think public transport is very much a key issue here. If I give you one example, I had a resident phone me up, had a doctor hospital appointment and couldn't get from Stalham to his hospital appointment apart from leaving 3 hours well in advance to get to the hospital 3 hours in advance of his appointment, and then was finding it difficult to get home, hence he phoned me up. He could get to Wroxham, but he couldn't then get back to Stalham. And we're talking early evening here. So I think that the public transport is a big issue that I think we have to influence. We have to be more, I think, forward in terms of forceful on. And I think the other point I'd like to raise, which I think is really important, and I'm glad to see in there, is actually inclusive growth. Working with local employers, the local businesses, encouraging people to buy local. Because at the moment, we know our vegetables, our groceries are brought from all around the country. If you go to farm shops, you're genuinely using local produce. So promoting local produce, local employers. And I go back, and it isn't a swipe at all, but we are using a company that is in London for our greener house. And I've had this discussion, so it's nothing new. And I'm not saying anything more than, I'm not having a dig at all. But I struggle when we've got really good organisations who can give that advice and guidance within this area. And I gave the example, I actually had 3 companies come round to me. One of them was local. They gave me the same information and were impartial. I didn't feel pressured. And they actually then installed. And that was a local company in this area. I am worried when we do have projects that a lot of these projects nationally sometimes come from a way away. And I'm not saying we do here, but there is evidence that they've come from quite a way away. They've come to do a job and they've gone away, and you can't get them back to fix a problem. I think you've got a better chance if you use a local supplier, because of their reputation is going to be impacted locally. So just a couple of points, but I think they're just valid points. Nothing more than that. I'm not having to go at anyone, but I just feel it's important to say them.
No, that's absolutely fine. I welcome your comments, and yeah, I note those. Where possible, we do try to use local contractors, local companies for projects. Just briefly going on Make My House Green. Yes, it is a national company, but they do use local contractors. So when it comes to the contractor doing the actual installation works, it is going to be a local Norfolk or North Norfolk based contractor. And that's really important. And a really positive story is actually that we've got I think it's a North Norfolk based firm, and they're using the Make My House platform as their sort of digital platform now, because they don't have a website of their own. So that's actually boosting their business. So that's a nice sort of other positive implication there for that local contractor. When it comes to buses and transport, absolutely, that's a Norfolk County Council aspect. May I be so bold, Madam Chairman, but maybe the committee could actually ask the Transport Department to come in and you could hold them to account. I think that would be really worthwhile, actually. I am aware that it's affecting Stalham. I'm aware that it's affecting other rural parishes, very smaller parishes across our district. So I would welcome that committee bring in Norfolk County Council's Transport Department and maybe make them review and look into those questions you're raising today, Councillor. Thank you.
Lovely, thanks very much. I think Councillor Hankins, briefly.
And using members to push these grants, what would be useful would be a list of the grant. I know they're contained elsewhere in other documents, but a simple list of the grant. These are the grants that are available for this situation. That would help, I think, enormously in communicating with parish councils to say, look, this is what's available, you know, this is how you get it. Simple list. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor. I'm sure we can do that. Where possible, we do try to provide parish, town councils, communities directly with some of the information. But like I say, it is important that local members also reiterate that message as well. So if possible, we can try and funnel relevant information. I believe we're doing that already, but we can try and ensure that we keep on top of that.
Thank you. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Varley, Councillor Varley, how can you reconcile the destruction of the rainforests that are actually absorbing carbon capture with the extraction of lithium and promoting electric vehicles? That's one question. The second question is carbon emissions on the productions of new vehicles, and I bet everybody nearly in this room changes their car maybe every 2, if not 3 years. How do you reconcile that? And the other thing is a little bit on what we were talking about with buses. How does people with restricted mobility actually visit this office with public transport?
Thank you for your questions. You probably used Google for your first question, did you? No,
I didn't.
I think there's a balance to be made. You know, I think it's really important that we get off of fossil fuels, which is, you know, quite clearly damaging, you know, our rainforests, you know, our natural landscapes here. Of course, there has to be a balance. But it's really important that we do so. Electric vehicles and their batteries will last at least 20-25 years. So I think it's really important that we note that. In regards of your second question, I mean, I think that's more of the question you should be asking the Transport Department at Norfolk County Council. And like I say, I would welcome this committee bringing them into the chamber to scrutinise those aspects.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we've given that a good discussion. We were asked to adopt the revision to the Environmental Charter. Does anyone have any comments on the revised Environmental Charter? I mean, I had a question is, why a charter? Do we have a charter for any of our other themes? Do we have a charter for the environment, for example, or do we have a charter for fiscal prudence? Or it struck me as an odd concept.
So if I remember correctly, we did have a customer services charter when we did the customer service improvement. So it's a pledge of our intention of what we're going to deliver for residents. That's what the charter was designed to. It's not in the same, I mean, I could have a financial charter if you would so wish, Madam Chair.
Yeah,
I don't think it would be quite so beautiful if we did, unfortunately.
Yeah, just following on to Councillor Shire's comments. It's outwardly focused, so it is about what we're doing for residents and communities. So I think a charter is apt. We've had this charter now since 2019, 2020, so it's just updating that charter, just making it more relevant. As what we're doing with our other policy documents as well, never has it been more timely to have this review process. We were always going to review these policy documents. A lot has happened since 2019, but so much has happened in the past year with local government reorganisation. So we really need to think about how that affects our journey. Like I say, net zero is a journey. We still have our 2030 internal target for net zero and our external wider district net zero target for 2045. So the destination has not changed. It's just the journey has slightly changed. The different avenues we're going down per se. So it's really important that we embark on this review process. Thank you.
So does anyone have any other questions about the charter? Councillor Penfold?
I guess the obvious one is, are we on course to meet those targets by 2030? The 2045 one is more difficult to answer, but in terms of our internal operations.
Well, it saddens me to say that by 2030, this administration and organisation probably, will not be here. But what's really important is that we continue with our targets. I think that's really important, that we keep those in place. We keep chipping away at carbon emissions and showcasing to communities the beneficial aspect of embracing net zero living. Now, like I say, with LGR, this is a huge challenge to Norfolk and Suffolk. It's a radical change in the local government structure, but what isn't going to change is people being affected. That North Norfolk is still on the brink of climate change and implications of climate change, coastal erosion, severe flooding. So it's really important that we keep these policies in place and we keep those targets and we keep trying to do these projects to decrease carbon emissions. And I'm confident that we are doing everything we can.
So just if I may, I get the LGR thing. It may or may not happen, but is the trajectory we're on getting us towards that 2030? All what you said, yeah, absolutely fine. But what's our trajectory? Were we to remain in place as a council?
The trajectory is going in the right way. Absolutely. We just need to keep channeling good, robust carbon reduction projects.
Okay, shall we move on to the decarbonisation strategy? And what questions do we have on that? This includes the action plan. Councillor Cushing?
Thank you. If we take to page 143 of our report, it specifies what the plan is. Can you tell us how much carbon will be reduced? What is the plan to reduce carbon every year in terms of tonnage?
Yeah, thank you. It's really important that we have this combined action plan to hold the policy to account. That's more of a technical point, so I'm going to hand over to Kate, if I may.
It's very difficult to do it as a step-by-step reduction of the carbon. There will be one or two things, if we do them, that will give us a big jump in the carbon, whereas other things are little and incremental. And as we've already discussed earlier, one or two big projects could also mean that we still are on a bit of a bumpy road, that one year our carbon footprint might go up a little bit, but then the next year it might come down. So we have looked at putting targets in on a year-by-year basis, but we didn't find that it was particularly helpful in plotting our journey going forward.
Thank you. I appreciate what you've said. I just came back to Councillor Penfold's worries and concerns about whether we'll actually achieve the 2030 target, but that makes it a little bit hard for us to actually monitor whether we are making progress or not. If we just say we don't, it's a difficult one to measure. I thought it would be helpful if we did have something a bit firmer that we can put our hand on. If you said there are 1 or 2 key points in there, well, what are they, and are there any ways that we can monitor the key elements which should turn the dial significantly?
Certainly are a couple of projects which we can be held up to account to that have carbon savings actually attributed to them. And if those aren't delivered, then that's certainly something we would be looking particularly at. I mean, the overall decline in emissions, as you'll see from the graph in the carbon footprint report, what was a graph moving like that is now a much steeper curve that we've got to follow down in order to meet our targets. It's certainly not getting any easier.
But what's really important, Councillor, is that we're here this morning and we're reviewing this carbon footprint report, or have reviewed and discussed the carbon footprint report. That's where you can hold myself, Cabinet, the administration to task. And obviously, like I say, this is a combined journey. If you have any ideas that we haven't thought of, I would more than happily discuss those and take those in. Thank you.
I mean, it's a very lucid and helpful report. For the action plan, over 1/3 of the actions don't have any carbon footprint reduction. And I calculated over the 2 years, it would be about 1,600 kilotons of CO2 that was going to be saved from the actions that did have a CO2 reduction, which didn't seem to match what we needed. So is the stuff that's actions that aren't included in the action plan currently that will get us to our goal?
The action plan could be more ambitious. I certainly would say that. No, it's still going to be, we're still going to need to find more carbon savings if we're going to actually be a zero carbon. Net zero is a little bit of a wiggle term in that it does allow you, if you haven't reached your target at the end of the administration, that you can buy carbon offsetting. But again, there's obviously a huge cost attributed to that, and so that's something that we have to bear in mind. But we'll keep pushing on and coming up with more projects, hopefully, because this only takes us to March 27, so there's still more time beyond that.
So my next question would be, perhaps Councillor Jazz is going to answer, is there any flexibility to do just that? Not that one wants to buy carbon credits, but
so the issue that we face, and poor Adam bucks against me quite often, is when we think of our exciting projects. So we've got a swimming pool coming to the west of the district. Now that's fantastic, and we've championed that, and I'm sure Fakenham colleagues are equally excited about that. But when we bring projects such as that forward, the climate change team are going to be looking at how much that's going to cost us in carbon and what that's going to do with our plans going forward. And this is where we have to find the balance of where we are. So I'm forever apologising to Councillor Varley when we do bring big projects through, because I know it makes his team's job ever more difficult. So we will have to look at where we are and where we're heading. But my hope is that when we get to the point where we are establishing new councils, that when people come together, they've got the shared goal of what they want to achieve. Because for North Norfolk, it's been hugely important that we move towards net zero, and for communities such as Haysborough, who are facing climate change, knowing that we are with them through it has been massively important. So I know I spoke about LGR going forward in my papers, but I think that's something that the committee are going to need to be mindful of. How do we transfer? Because we could do everything we could possibly do up until 2028, and then the years beyond that are far beyond our control, unfortunately.
Okay, just going back to the action plan, Officer Rawlings, you said it could be more ambitious. Is that something within our gift?
With infinite money and resources, yes.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that comment at all. I mean, a very ambitious project I would like us to embark on is HVO for our waste fleet. I'm sure councillors will note in the report that that's one of, if not the biggest, emission for this council. If we embarked on HVO, that would cut our carbon emissions severely. However, it's a balance of carbon reduction and hard finances. And Councillor Shires has already stated this morning that we do butt heads a little, but you know, always in good terms. But if we were to embark on that project, HVO is more expensive. It's more expensive than diesel. And also there's other aspects in regards of sustainability, whether HVO is derived from palm oil or not. If it's derived from palm oil, then there's absolutely no point that we take it up. So we need to look into these points. A very good paper has been written and is being circulated through the departments of this council on HVO, but it is a cabinet decision in regards of finances, and there's that balance to be made.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Housden and Councillor Bayes, and then we'll wrap this up.
Thank you, Chair. Just if we can just go to page 58 of the report, net zero initiatives to support council's net zero programme. We're spending £384,000. I'd just like to know how that's spent and where it goes.
So that's in reserves, councillor.
So that's reserves for your work for net zero initiatives for this council, is it?
Yeah, that's part of the 500k reserve for climate change and net zero.
Fine, thank you.
Councillor Bayes.
I'll leave it with a smile on your face, but I can just report on number 10 of your action plan that Downtown Council have just put 2 non-flushable urinals in that refurbishment.
Fantastic. I'm really pleased to hear that, councillor, and Stalham are doing some fantastic things. And of course, you've been aided by the Norfolk-wide Net Zero Communities project, and I was really thrilled. I think the whole team were thrilled by yours and Councillor Taylor's. Sorry, I'm forgetting this morning. Councillor Taylor's commitment to that project and engagement with that project, and yeah, it seems to be that Stalham is doing some really positive net zero projects. So I'd love to be updated with those. Thank you.
Thank you all very much indeed. So the recommendations are that we adopt the revisions to the Environmental Charter, we adopt the decarbonisation strategy and the associated action plan, and we note the contents of the carbon footprint report. So are we all content? Following our discussion with those, would you take this to a vote, please? All those in favour? Okay, thank you very much indeed. So thank you very much indeed. Going on to the next substantive item, which is the Cabinet Work Programme. Can I just, before we move on, that the transport recommendation, shall we take that in the work programme section rather than having it as a formal recommendation? Would you be content with that? Because it does seem to naturally fit into the work programme. That's all right with you? Okay. So does anyone have any comments on the Cabinet Work Programme? Item 15? No? Okay. Item 16, the overview and scrutiny work programme and update. So does anyone have any comments about the update, the recommendations and actions tracker, which is, I would say, is very helpful, is much improved. Has anyone had any comments about the in progresses not being sufficiently clear? I take the silence as a yes. So moving on to the work programme for scrutiny. There was a request, is that correct, Officer Falconbridge, that we have a look at the cost of temporary accommodation?
That's right, yeah. So housing put in a request that we look at, and they took to business planning a review of their temporary accommodation portfolio that they asked us to look into or consider if we would want to see it. I thought it obviously sat nicely with the homelessness strategy that was due to come quite soon. That's not due to come now until February. But obviously they were conscious that they're based on 24-25 figures, that review. So they were looking to potentially see that, or for the ONS to see that sooner than that if we could. But obviously that would depend if you really wanted to see that, because it is really just an overview of, you know, do we feel as if the money that that's been spent on those temporary accommodations has been sort of value for money. But that's obviously for you to discuss, really, if you want to see that or not, and when.
I mean, it's a good topic for us to look at in terms of value for money reviews is one of our raison d'etre. Question is where you fit it in. You could have it in January, have it in December, ask Anglia Water to come in February, or we could have it. I don't see the problem having it in February, actually, with homelessness strategy. It seems to fit in very nicely, even though the data will be a little bit old. I don't think it invalidates the review. What do members think? Do you think, first of all, do you think it's a worthwhile endeavour that we look at the value for money for temporary accommodations? It's a substantial amount of money. Yeah? Okay, that's all yes. So is it yes that we look at it in February? Okay. Good, are you happy with that, officer? Yep. And the other, that transports it, sorry, Councillor Clement.
No, so sorry. I think you were just coming on to it. I'm just picking up on our net zero discussion about whether we did want to invite anyone from county.
Yeah.
Be happy to ask the portfolio holder, Councillor Plant, to come along. Be entertaining. So we could, you know, if we wanted to propose that and fit that in, we could do it.
What do members see?
Because
what do members think? I mean, it's a transport is a problem for all our rural communities.
let's propose. I can propose that we request maybe the portfolio holder come here.
Yep.
Yep.
Could we
I'll see him.
could we
next week.
make sure we actually have this scoped out and some evidence before we invite
Yeah.
anyone in, please, so that we don't just get the standard straightforward line, because I fear that's what we'd probably
Yeah,
get.
we're looking sort of spring, aren't we? I suppose.
Yes, I mean, is there
late spring.
space for one of our scoping documents for this?
Maybe.
I mean,
Yeah.
we've all got evidence in our parishes that it takes you 6 hours to get to the GP and 3 days to get to Norwich and that sort of thing. I mean, we all have that data, don't we? Okay. But
Yeah,
we
I
are,
mean,
as we
I think
say,
we
are
I think we
looking
can
at spring.
invite them because they won't come till April, May time probably, earliest, I'd imagine, if at all.
Perhaps we'd have some constructive suggestions.
Well,
about what
can we
what would
pick up
work.
on the Crime Commissioner's point about designation of road speed limits? Because it was quite clear that statutory and designation are two separate things. And if we take up the West Sussex principle, roads can be redesignated. And that would be a good point to have in, because she was quite firm on that.
But it was a highway, it is a county issue. Is that a bit confusing to have two major topics in one?
Yeah, I mean, it's whether you want to have a discussion about highways or you want to have a discussion about transport, or you put them both together, because his brief will cover both of those.
Okay, so
But,
do members want transport and speed limits, essentially, which would they?
I mean, we'll have to keep it focused, obviously, as Mal says. Yeah, if he does come, then it's worth doing as much as we can.
What's the if part? Sort of.
So that, okay, so it would be about transportation and speed limits, basically. Okay, well, that's a good addition. I mean, the other thing I thought perhaps you should visit health at some stage. We haven't had ambulance response times or closure of community facilities for a little while. I didn't know if anybody wanted to add that to the work programme. Yeah, is that a yes? Okay, good.
Madam Chair, could we add dentistry to that? Or lack of?
Yeah.
Lose.
Yes, that's very good. Thank you for reminding us of that. Okay, I think that makes the work programme look very complete to me. Okay, so that endeth the public session. the meeting, so we're now finished. Yeah, no need to exclude the press and public owing to the fact we don't have any exempt material.